Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Look, today we're talking about the investing war, the two key emotions you need to be aware of. Let's jump straight into it. Okay, so we're doing these rawcasts. What is a rawcast? It's basically a audio series that I'm doing for iTunes, walking in between meetings and talking to you guys as though we're talking over the phone. I thought this would be more interesting and more raw, more real and more to the point than if I was sitting in a studio recording something with a fancy mic like everything else. So guys, that is what these rawcasts are. And the first one we're doing today is on the war of investing. So if you think about investing and what investing really is, it's really a mindset. It's really a process where you use your brain as opposed to using your physical assets. If you were to go out there and work, or if you're an athlete, you're really using your body. But when it comes to investing, it's really about using your brain. And what I found in my experience, talking to a lot of really interesting people, talking to a lot of investors that are successful, and observing the habits of those that aren't. Most investors aren't successful. And I sat down and I observed for many, many years, and I found that it all comes down to a battle between two key emotions. The two key emotions are, the first one is fear. Most of us have fear. It's really in our biology. It's a primal instinct. We have it in really everything that we do, and we've developed it as human beings because it has kept us alive. The fear of death has kept us alive and allowed those that are the fittest to survive. And so when it comes to investing, because it's very much a mental exercise, the first emotion that drives decision making is fear, which is fair enough. It's good to have fear. You have to have your guard up. But I've observed that the best investors actually work on the second emotion. They understand fear, they manage fear, but they work on achievement. Now, achievement is sometimes called greed. A very good friend of mine recently came up to me and said, look, stop using the word greed because I think it has a negative connotation. Achievement and progression is perhaps a bit more reflective, and I agree. And I think when it comes to investing, it's always a war between these two emotions, between fear that stops us doing things and between the pursuit of achievement, the pursuit of progression, or if you want to call it greed. Now, it's very important to understand how a war takes place. You usually have two or more competing forces, and then what will happen in a war, even if it's a physical war, take the Second World War, for example, where there were many countries involved, but they basically formed two sides. And so we see this in sport, where you have two sides. You see it in politics, where you have two competing sides. And investing, it's the same thing. You have all these emotions in your life, but at the end of the day, they drill down and they come into these two forces, these two emotions, which are the fear that stops you from doing things, that freaks you out, the fear that forces you to overcomplicate things, the fear that turns you off and makes you procrastinate, and the sense of achievement on the other side that pushes you on, that helps you persevere, that pushes you to learn and study and network and mingle and do things. And what I found is that most people start off in investing with a lot more fear than a sense of achievement. But as time goes on, the achievement side tends to develop. And through experience, the achievement side tends to gain some momentum. So it might start off as an 80-20, right? Where you're 80% driven by fear and you're 20% driven by achievement. But the more achievement you build, the more momentum you develop. When you get to that 50-50 point, you start to see a very different side of yourself. You start to view investing and view your mindset and view the whole exercise as more pleasurable. It starts to become less scary. To a lot of people, the whole notion of investing just freaks them out because they start with that 80-20, 80% fear, 20% sense of achievement. The best investors are those that are able to not only balance it out, but get it to a point where they have maybe 60 or 70% sense of achievement and 30 or 40% sense of fear. Look, fear is important. Fear is what keeps us in check. The better you do, it's important to always have that element of fear to stop you from making stupid decisions. But it is also something that holds a lot of people back. So I've written about this in this article extensively, and I've actually, what I've done is I've provided and built a quadrant, 4 steps basically. A quadrant is just 4 steps, and the 4 steps, I believe, will help you move from that 80% fear, 20% achievement to something a bit more balanced, to something a bit more 50-50. It's a starting point. It's by no means a perfect system, but it's something that I've used in my life. I've observed, I've spent the past few months building, and I think you also can use it to your advantage. So look, guys, just understand that it's a war. In order to win a war, you need to build as much ammunition as possible. Sticking with the analogy, those that are able to bunker in and survive the longest, the side that manages to do that is the side that tends to win the war. And I want you to think of it and work out a game plan and a strategy using these 4 steps. The link to the article is in the show notes, depending on where you're listening to this. If you're listening to it on iTunes, it's in the description. I encourage you to click through, read it, send me your feedback. Happy investing, guys. There's a lot more of these raw comments to come. I'm about to step into a meeting, and I hope you have a fantastic day.